The problem is with the hating on the owners. Listen, don't get me started on Sullivan, but you can't have an argument about Sullivan this season because you spent £160 million on players. So you've got to park that one up. You've got to go after who it is that's not achieving. And tragically for us who happen to like David Moyes, David is in that camp and they're zeroing in on him now. And David's interview on the weekend was probably the weakest I've seen him do. Difficult to be strong after that performance, but notwithstanding that, you ain't going to get away with suggesting to West Ham fans that are staring relegation in the eyes, well, we did good last year and we've done well in the previous 2 seasons. You're not going to carry that anymore.
Yeah, he seems to stick to that theme. Simon's got a point there. This seems to be the running theme when Moyes is asked about it ain't going well, why is it not going well? On Saturday, actually, I spoke to David very briefly as he walked by, and great man, I've known him for years. Just said hi, but got on about his business, doing post-match interviews. But he was asked about fan unrest and what his take was on that after a 4-0 defeat, of course.
Totally understand. They've been watching a really good team for the last 3 years, a team which has been finishing 6th or 7th in the Premier League. Been watching a team who's been getting to the semi-final of Europe, a team who's just won the group in Europe again, so I understand it's hard to come and watch that performance today.
So David is reminding us about what they've got used to, Simon. But is that theme running thin now? Is that argument running thin?
Well, there's 2 things David's doing. He was calling for action a couple of weeks ago about people that were going to come with him. And it seemed to be a pointed and acerbic observation about, we'll see who's got the appetite for this. And alongside me, I've got the appetite. And he's reminding people of what their achievements were. And that's great. People do have to give an element of credit to what they've done before, and people have to be given a little bit of dispensation for things that are happening in the here and now. But it won't wash. He said it again on the weekend, and I'm in the David Moyes camp. I'm not advocating, like some people are, that Michael Carrick should be hoisted out of Middlesbrough and chucked into West Ham because once upon a time he played for them. I'm in the camp that David Moyes has got to fix this problem and probably has enough in that dressing room to be able to do so. But this was not the memo that was sent to the West Ham fans at the beginning of the season. The memo was, we would, and Souness called it, again, I hate to keep giving him credit because he's a bailout merchant, but the bottom line is that he was right about West Ham suggesting that they would have a difficult season, and here they have thus. But you cannot square the circle for David and give him passes all the time, despite our liking of him, because this is the season where David was given the proper support that West Ham fans scream and cry that managers are never given.
But we're into March now. There's no point in Sullivan making a change now, is there?
Well, I would think not, unless there's a complete and utter disillusioned dressing room that's not responding to David Moyes anymore. We don't know that. What I saw against Nottingham Forest last week was a very good West Ham. Declan Rice scoring a very good goal. Declan Rice being everything he hasn't been in recent games, which is influencing the game. The forward players, because the argument we were having was the backbone of West Ham, Souček and BeIN and all those sort of players that had got them to the heights wasn't performing. That's not true anymore now. They're all at it now.
It's very
in
rigid,
certain games.
isn't it, Jim? When you watch West Ham play, if you look, they're not one of the teams that really go and press the ball very high. They have sort of like a mid-block, okay? So they're not really aggressive to get it back, so they're not going to score goals that way. They're not really that creative, Souček in midfield. And when you look at Brighton, you look at how they've evolved, and you look at David Moyes and how he's evolved, it's not just about putting really good creative players in, it's the roles you then give them. And to hear Declan Rice say that he felt totally lost, tactically lost at the weekend, players are starting to lose belief in what they've been asked to do. So he has to quickly work out a way. Now, with that amount of talent on the pitch, you've got, when you start going through it, Jim, with Ben Rama, BeIN, the Ings now, the answer to everything a week ago, you've got to play attacking football, play to their strengths. And when you play Brighton, as I say, if you don't get it right tactically, you get undone, and you've got to be absolutely perfect in your performance. And they were far from that. Everything went wrong for West Ham, so they're in trouble, Jim.
So Simon's a West Ham fan. He joins us live. Simon, you would argue this has been going wrong for a while, would you?
Yeah, I had a conversation with Martin a couple of weeks ago where he said that he didn't fear for West Ham over Everton because we have an identity in the way that we played, and I totally disagree with that, and I'm not sure where we ended up with that. But you've just brought up a point where Moyes, in an interview, said they've had a great last 3 years. And it was a point that I made when I spoke to Martin a fortnight ago. It hasn't been a great last 3 years. And until Moyes gets it into his head that in January of last year, so that's over, we're talking 13 months ago, when he had the opportunity to grasp the nettle and go out and make us into, when we were fourth, above Chelsea, Tottenham, Arsenal, blah, 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 blah. And he bought nobody. He didn't replace Antonio. Ever since that month, that is when it has gone horribly wrong at West Ham. If you'd if this season went from January to January, i.e. January 22 through to this season, we would be relegated with 28 points. So him saying that we've had a great last 3 years is complete bunkum. It's not true, and he's using Europe as almost a smokescreen. I mean, for the love of God, we're in the Europa Conference and we're beating bricklayers' arms away. I mean, and he's counting that as some kind of fortitude for the club.
Yeah, but I suppose, Simon, you would want to win the Europa Conference League if you can, and you just might.
I want to win every game that we play. It doesn't identify to me what game we're playing. I want to win every game that we play. I know that's not going to happen, but you want to win every game. And I'm not.
No, your points are well made, Simon. Yeah.
I just don't see where he's saying the last 3 years has been great.
Simon's saying he sees it totally differently to Moyes.
Well, Simon, look, this is Simon. You're the caller, aren't you? Last time I felt you was very down on West Ham, and there was an important game coming up, and you just would wanted him out the door, didn't you? You've wanted him out the door since the day he walked into the club. No, am I right in saying that?
Not absolutely not true. Don't put words in my mouth. I've wanted him out the door.
So what? So you're saying
since January of last year when he didn't take the opportunity.
So until that point, then they were playing. They were doing well, were they? Let's give him some credit. No, Simon, can we do that? There was some goodness about
18 months. He had a good 18
months. Oh, there we are. So you just said 3 years, but now you've tracted that and you're saying 18 months.
Moyes said, no. See, Martin, you've got to listen first to Paul's post. I said, Moyes said he's had a great last 3 years, right?
And you disagree?
And I disagree because he had a good 18 months and the last year and, last 14 months have been nothing short of a disaster. And if it was a January league, we'd be relegated with 28 points. So what he's saying is factually incorrect. And what you're putting words into my mouth are factually incorrect as well.
So Simon, do you think it would be folly to make a change now at this stage?
Well, the change should have been made probably a year
ago. Right, well, that ship sailed. But at this stage, we're into March now. What's the point? What do you think?
Yeah, I'd have him out the door. I mean, I was there at Brighton on Saturday and they did not lift the leg. And
no.
Rice and Ings both, when Moyes walked over and gave instructions to Declan Rice, and it wasn't a great look by Declan, by the way, Declan shook his head and literally, you could see in his eyes, he said, what is this bloke on about?
So he's lost the players?
Completely. I mean, how can you have 23% possession in a game? I mean, that's literally just standing there and watching the other side play around you.
Well, you can make the argument that Bournemouth had 15% possession, yet it were 2-0 up against Arsenal. So when you looked at, I thought you were West Ham, Simon, were in very good nick against Nottingham Forest the previous week. Were you unhappy with Declan Rice raising his eyebrows at his manager and whatever else he did and didn't do in that game when West Ham played well?
Did you watch the Nottingham Forest game?
I did.
Right, so in its entirety for the 90 minutes?
I watched a significant proportion of it, yeah.
So you didn't watch the 90 minutes. For the first 70 minutes...
Okay, well, let's not be pedantic. I watched a significant proportion of it.
Simon, I think the bottom line question would be this, mate. The bottom line question would be this. Do you stay up?
The entirety of that.
Do you stay up?
Simon? No, absolutely not. No, not just.
Well, not with bloody supporters like you won't. No.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.